For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Oh, that was really weird. My OBS just closed on itself. That was really weird. Well, welcome back to the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, hosted by GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nolan Jamber. First three segments were NBA. Talk about the New York Pistons game from last night, the Clippers Denver game from last night, and a preview of the games for tonight. This segment, we're talking about the NBA player pool. The anonymous NBA player poll was released today, and there's always a lot to talk about when that comes out. Talk about the MVP. This is all from players in the league, by the way. I mean, every player votes and vote for who's their MVP, who's the best team, worst team, head coach, worst head coach, all that stuff. So that came out today, and I feel like it's a good time to talk about it. It just came out, so let's talk about it. So first thing that came up on the list was the MVP. The top three candidates were obviously Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jokic. So the players, they voted very heavily favored into SGA. According to the stat, 56.1 of the out of the 155 voters, 56.1% voted for SGA, 37.4 voted for Jokic, and 1.9 for Giannis. And then Donovan Mitchell and LeBron James, 1.9 and 1.3. Do I agree with that? I do agree. Yeah, obviously Jokic and Shai should be the top two players. They're the top best two players in the league. I do think overall, though, as a player, I do think Jokic is better than SGA. I think he just does a lot more for his team. I think you can rely on him to have a better game than SGA, and he does. But SGA has also led the Thunder to the first seed in the Western Conference, possibly the most competitive Western Conference we've had in a while. So, honestly, do I agree with the vote? It could go both ways. But I think SGA, it was either between him and Jokic, and he had the win, and he had obviously 56% of the voters in his favor. So, yeah, I agree with it. Obviously, could have had Jokic, maybe a few more votes for him or less for SGA. But overall, that's the right vote to have. SGA has led his team to the number one seed in the Western Conference, the most competitive Western Conference we have seen in a while. And I think that's a very important statistic for him to have. Second, out of 137 players, they had the question, which team other than your own will win the title this season? And out of all that, 57% of the players who voted said the Boston Celtics. And I completely agree with that. I think the Boston Celtics are looking to go back-to-back. And I've been saying this for a while. I think they will go back-to-back because they have a chip on their shoulder that they want to, beat the fraud allegations. They want to beat the allegations that since they had an easy Eastern Conference sweep last year, since the Eastern wasn't nearly as strong as the West, that was a cakewalk for them. And then I just think that's a bad, I'm not a huge Boston Celtics fan. I'm not going out of my way to, support them, but I think that narrative is very stupid. Any team in the playoffs deserves to be in the playoffs. And okay, they beat the Hawks in 4, or whoever they played for. Yeah, Hawks in 4. The Hawks aren't a good playoff team. The Eastern Conference, that was their first round. They made their way through the playoffs. They sweeping the Pacers. Sweep the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. The teams that made it deserve to be there, and they deserve to be. They beat the Mavericks in, 6, 5? I forgot what it was, but they deserved it. They had the best team. They had Tatum, Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, that team was just so well balanced, and they were the best overall team in the NBA. I think that's a completely fair take to say they will go back to back. OKC Thunder was second place votes with 17%. They're a good team. They're just nowhere near as good as Boston. I just think, like I said, I completely agree with the fact that Celtics will go back to back. And yeah, I mean, that's just all I can say about that. The next topic was who will be the face of the league in 5 years. And 54% of the players said Victor Wembanyama. I completely agree with that as well. Anthony Edwards was second with only 13% of the voters. And SGA 10, and then a bunch of guys who were like 10% or lower. Wemby is 100%. I mean, he could be realistically, if he stayed healthy, I think he could be the face of the NBA right now. But he was the face of the NBA come draft time 2 years ago when he got drafted. He was the most well sought after prospect since LeBron. And I think that's very hard. It's not easy for someone to, become that well sought after. And he was able to do it. And Victor Wembanyama in 5 years, 100% will be the face of the league, especially if LeBron retires and there's going to be someone there to fill his shoes. I think it's going to be Wembanyama for sure. If he can stay healthy and keep dominating, and even with him gone, he helped. When he was healthy, he took the Spurs on a very, very good run. He was a phenomenal player. Even for how tall he is, he's 7'4", 7'5". He's shooting threes consistently, going in, jumpers. Obviously, he's getting boards. I mean, he averages 13 boards a game. That's insane for someone who was drafted 2 years ago or a year prior. I mean, he will be the face of the league in 5 years. Ant-Man, obviously, the 13% of the voters who voted for him. I can see why. If Victor Wembanyama didn't exist, if he wasn't in the league right now, 100% Ant-Man would be the face of the league. But Wemby, I mean, it's Wemby. 7'4", 7'5" center out of France. I mean, that brings global attention to you when you hear a 7'5" center which is drafted out of France. That's always a huge thing to hear for an organization. People will come to the NBA. People have come to the USA from France all around the world to come watch Wembanyama, and that's always that proves that's a lot of upside for his future in the NBA and fan bases as well. The next column vote topic: who is the most overrated player in the NBA? Out of the 90 players who voted, 14%, who he led the vote with 14%, said Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, I don't completely agree with that. The next person in line who had 10% of the votes, I do agree with. It was Rudy Gobert. I think he is the most overrated defensive player ever. He has 4 DPOIs, and it can easily be dimmed down to 2. I just don't think Rudy Gobert, is just that good of a player. He really isn't. He really can't do anything besides get rebounds. And his defense, he's not that good of a defensive player either. He's just so tall that he's able to stick his arms up in the paint and just get blocks. But Tyrese at first, I just kind of don't agree with. He has led this Pacers team through the regular season, through a very tough Eastern Conference, or not, I would say Eastern Central Division Conference. It's a tough division. Then Bucks, Pistons, Cavs. I mean, that's a really tough conference. And he was able to, push through, help lead his team. He was the leader of the team. He led the team in, any situation. He was there. Make a pass, bang. He's a great playmaker. I said that earlier. He's a great playmaking guard. Shooting, he's not the greatest shooter in the world, but his playmaking makes up for it. He's like a, Magic John. Not really Magic. I'm not comparing him to Magic, but the way he plays is kind of similar to Magic. And I mean, overrated. I wouldn't say he's the most overrated, but I could see why people voted for him. But I do think Rudy Gobert is definitely the one to claim that title as the most overrated this year. The most underrated player out of the 136, 8% of the players, Cade Cunningham out of the Detroit Pistons. Now, I can get behind that any day of the week, and I'll tell you that. Cade Cunningham, Derek White, second place with 7% of the voters. Very close, very close. But Cade Cunningham completely deserves that award. He took this Pistons team from 14 wins last year. He didn't take them to 14 wins, but he took them from having a 14-win season to tripling that and getting 30 more wins from 14 to 44 wins in a year. Absolutely amazing. Cade Cunningham has completely turned the Pistons organization around, completely turned around the mentality that was going around in the Pistons, the organization. And he's a reason a lot of players want to come to Detroit because, he leads the team so well. He's a leader, even for a guy he's so young, drafted only 4 years ago. But, Cade Cunningham, most underrated player, completely deserved. First-time All-Star this year, playing like an All-Pro player, like a first-team All-Pro NBA player. He's phenomenal. He completely deserves that recognition, and I'm happy that people are finally starting to recognize that, Cade Cunningham is that guy. A few more quick ones I want to talk about. Best organization in the NBA, the Golden State Warriors. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. They've been the best organization for so long. It's just, they even when they think they're just out of the run, they make a trade. The Jimmy Butler trade completely flipped the organization around for the year, and obviously they got the Kevin Durant trade a while ago. This organization has just done so much, so well, consistently, and they're just that good. The worst organization is Charlotte Hornets. That's a no-brainer. Charlotte really does. I think the Wizards in second. I think, honestly, the Brooklyn Nets should be higher on that list. Yeah, I completely agree with the Charlotte being last, but I think Brooklyn's a lot worse of an organization than some of the other teams. But Charlotte's got no future. They really don't. They really does not have. They don't really have a good future in Charlotte. It really is nothing to look forward to over there. So I completely agree with Charlotte being that spot, the top of the worst organizations in basketball according to the player poll. That's all I got for this segment. Next segment, we're ending it off. NFL mock draft, top 6 picks. We'll talk about that. We'll get to that after the break.